if we were to use your Super Bowl ad as an example, how did you get buy-in? What KPIs were you measuring? And how did you project returns?
It's a great question. I get that question a lot. I would say you have to have someone that isn't completely risk averse at the helm of the company to be able to have a great brand strategy from day one. There are certain things you can do when you don't have an 8-figure strategy that aren't running a Super Bowl ad that can inflect and infuse humor and other emotions into the brand.
I'm joined by Melissa Rosenthal, Chief Creative Officer at ClickUP, an all-one productivity platform that last raised $400 million in its Series C at a $4 billion valuation. Melissa is a force to be reckoned with. She's been named in Forbes 30 Under 30, Business Insider's 30 Most Creative People in Advertising Under 30, and Digiday's Changemakers. And of course, she's largely been responsible for building the brand that is ClickUP. Melissa, I appreciate you being generous with your time. I've got 5 pressing questions for you. Are you down?
I'm down. Let's do it.
Back when internet media was still being understood and the concept of virality was rather new, and the word viral itself was just starting to catch on, you began interning for a small 8-person company by the name of BuzzFeed. It was that internship in the early days of BuzzFeed that allowed you to eventually become their global VP of Creative Strategy, and then become CRO at Cheddar, before ultimately taking the helm as Chief Creative Officer at ClickUp. Long story short, you've risen the ranks at an exceptional pace and have made significant waves along the way. For young folks that aspire to make the strides that you have, and even people later in their careers, what advice do you have? How would someone go about finding a similar caliber of excitement, purpose, and hyper-growth in their profession?
Yeah, well, thank you for that question. There are a lot of pieces to it, I would say. I would say the first thing is trying to figure out what you're passionate about and what drives you and actually motivates you and what doesn't feel like a job every day of your life. That's what's going to allow you to do the best work, be the most collaborative, wake up happy and live a joyous existence, and be really amazing in what you do and at what you do. So I'd say that that's the first piece. It's figuring out what drives you. And the second piece of that is then once you find that, being able to take roles and take opportunities and sometimes even risks in your career that allow you to have those opportunities. So, joining a 5,000 person team out of college, I likely wouldn't have ever had the opportunities that I have today. So it was a mix of finding what I was passionate about, allowing myself to take a risk and an opportunity that would allow me to wear many hats and grow really quickly, and not being afraid. So you can't be completely risk averse if you want to really be kind of in this very innovative or fast-paced career. So there's a lot of pieces that go along with it, but if you are, pretty sure or clear of what you want to be doing, or you're able to weed that out, same thing through opportunities that allow you to grow quickly, you'll be able to find something, or at least understand, or start to understand what you don't like about certain aspects of a role or a job or a career. If you like leadership, if you don't like leadership, if you like driving strategy, if you like contributing to strategy, there are so many pieces to it. But I think identifying passions, allowing yourself to take opportunities, and not being completely risk averse really help in that journey.
Interesting. What would you say to people that say that following your passion is kind of a privilege? Sometimes you have to get through the grunt work to earn that privilege. What would you say to those people?
I would say that's completely right. I would say put yourself in the opportunities where you're able to understand what your passions are. And that doesn't mean your first job is going to be your dream job. That means you're going to learn from your first job. You're going to learn from your second job or your third job, what you like doing, what you don't like doing. So by the time you're on the job number 4 or 5, it could even be 10, you have a very clear understanding of that. And you can allow yourself to take roles and define yourself in certain areas. For instance, as you noted, my second role was CRO. Mostly, I did a lot of different things. I ran pretty much everything. But I focused on revenue because I wanted to be more well-rounded. I wanted to try it out, and I wanted to have a much better business acumen. So I learned I didn't like a lot of aspects of it, but I learned that I also really like certain aspects of it. But also understanding the sales motion and sales cycle, and understanding how sellers relate to different aspects and stakeholders within a company allowed me to understand what I like, what I don't like, and then build on that. So I think it doesn't matter if you don't end up in your dream role, or if you're not following your passion immediately, but allowing yourself to get to that point is where you want to be.
I've noticed that you're a huge proponent of humanizing the ClickUp brand. It's your North Star. I can understand why it's really difficult to market and establish differentiation with something like software. It's a category that's instinctively looked at with an objective comparison of price and features. By humanizing it, you're taking a page from the B2C playbook of selling experience and feelings rather than just product. What does humanizing the brand look like when it comes to execution? How do you implement that on a practical level?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think it's a little sad that like it needs to be said, like that you should humanize software or humanize something that people are purchasing, but people still purchase through emotion, regardless of, how, you have to hit obviously value as well, but emotion is also a key driver. So how do you hit those points, those pain points through emotion? And how do you make people smile when they're using your app? How do you, hit on retention metrics? There are a lot of things that you can do to embody an emotionally driven brand throughout everything. So some real life examples of that are certain aspects of our product when you integrate other apps. There are funny emotions and GIFs and static images that pop out that really should embody and share the sentiment of the action that you're taking. So you're getting rid of another app, like that should be a celebration, and we put that emotion into the product. So that's on one side of it, right? That's going to help you. It's going to make that experience better. It's good. The sentiment is high. You're getting that like kind of endorphin boost. You might even smile from it. Just adding emotion into different kind of mechanisms of that. And then also through our performance marketing and our out-of-home advertising, there always has to be something. Save one day every week, right? That's a guarantee. It's a promise. It's a bold statement. It says that your time is valuable. It hits an emotional trigger too. People might be mad about it, but it's something that's going to make people look, and that's the goal. So it's thinking about the context of how you're speaking to your end consumer and buyer, where you're speaking to them, and thinking about how you can insert that emotion into whatever you're creating. So I think there's always a point of, hey, this does what it needs to do. It has the value prop. It has the features. It has the price point. Now take that blueprint and every little piece around that blueprint, you can draw something that speaks to those pillars that drives emotion. So that's how I think about it. It's a framework.
In just a 2-year tenure, you've seen ClickUp's user base grow from 200,000 to 800,000+ teams and go from 60 to 1,000 employees. I'd imagine with each phase of growth, with each hire, managing brand becomes incrementally harder, especially if you've got a philosophy like yours where you're trying to influence brand from top to bottom with intention at each and every company interaction. As the company has scaled, how have you scaled your orchestration of brand? How have you made sure that at 1,000 employees, that curated brand personality that you worked hard to establish doesn't become diluted?
That's a really great question. This isn't a sales pitch, but I would say using a system like ClickUp is really helpful because I am automatically assigned to all things that I need to have a perspective and a purview on. So there's definitely a lot of touch points throughout the product that allow me to have visibility into a lot of things that are happening across all phases of the company and all stages of different campaigns, events, anything that we're doing, I'm heavily involved in. Of course, there are small things that, there might be, hey, like, I wish we did this, but you can catch those and fix those after the fact. But having a system that encourages visibility at all stages, all projects, across all stakeholders, all departments, allows you to have a viewpoint into the company that you wouldn't if you were using a ton of different tools. So I can credit some of that to ClickUp. Also, it's important to have relationships with a lot of different stakeholders so that they understand what value you bring, your perspective, and then they start thinking that way. So embedding your philosophies and your viewpoints into other people at the company is, I would say, a good second step. Making yourself known, making yourself a stakeholder, a visible stakeholder is important. And I would say the third thing is, luckily, building a brand like we've built has attracted a lot of talent because of the brand. So a lot of people that are coming in are excited to be at a company that has the brand that we have. So they're thinking about it proactively. A lot of people will come to me with ideas. They're already kind of thinking in the mindset that I think in. So it's really nice. And, we can spitball on ideas. People Slack me all the time with ideas and we'll discuss it if it's not something that we're currently working on. But it's kind of a really great thing when you've built a brand that's noticeable in your field and in your industry, and you have people that are coming in because they're excited about that. So they're excited to work with people that are building the brand. So I'd say it's across those three things. That's the way that you are able to kind of combat the challenges that you might face as you scale, as it pertains to scaling your brand.
With your past experience at BuzzFeed, Cheddar, and even your studies in media and communication arts, I'm certain you've honed the ability to construct messaging that resonates, the act of creating connection to grab attention. You've likely got the perfect formula down for successful ads, content, creatives, etc. What key elements do you look to repeat in initiatives, the kinds that give you absolute confidence in the success of your messaging?
I think our ability to integrate humor into what we do is really strong. We've created formulas and templates that work well across everything that we do, and we try to replicate those, I would say, 60 to 70% of the time, while leaving 30 to 40% for new and innovative tests. So we test constantly. We test hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of ad creative a month. So finding those new winning formulas and finding those things that drive the needle forward while still being able to run and utilize the templates that we've built that already we know will work is sort of the strategy. So it's kind of that 70-30 or 80-20, depending upon how you look at it. And it depends on us from different perspectives. But it's always kind of thinking forward, but still being able to utilize things that allow you to scale. And it's a winning formula across different things, but you always want to take that not for granted and say that that's going to be the winning formula for forever. You need to keep thinking forward. So I would say that 80-20, 70-30 is a good way of thinking about it. Use templatized things that work and scale them, and then always continue testing and iterating and innovating.
Not many B2B tech companies go big on brand, mostly because it's an area where returns are not as immediate, they're harder to measure, and less visible. But with ClickUp, it seems like it's a key strategy, a competitive edge. Having recognized that, how do you ensure creativity doesn't run too wild, and you're ultimately able to translate creative efforts into material business gains? If we were to use your Super Bowl ad as an example, how did you get buy-in? What KPIs were you measuring? And how did you project returns?
It's a great question. I get that question a lot. I would say you have to have someone that isn't completely risk averse at the helm of the company to be able to have a great brand strategy from day one. There are certain things you can do when you don't have an 8-figure strategy that aren't running a Super Bowl ad that can inflect and infuse humor and other emotions into the brand that aren't expensive. There are ways of testing it out. And then scaling to a Super Bowl ad, many companies don't get there, but for us, the buy-in kind of made sense because we had built this very large out-of-home and brand awareness strategy for the past year before that. So having that align with our out-of-home strategy and not doing a national buy, we did a geo-targeted buy to the markets that we were running our out-of-home in. So being able to measure the impact of the Super Bowl ad in those markets versus markets that didn't see it and didn't have our out-of-home was one key way that we measured. You're never going to get dollar for dollar ROI on a Super Bowl ad, and if you're expecting that, you shouldn't run one. But there are key ways to measure. You can do a traffic analysis regression model where you can see how many people came to the site in those key markets, which is what we did. We can run brand awareness studies after the fact. We can measure share of voice on social engagements, interactions, actual deals that came in from it. How did you hear about us? Adding that to the site. There are a ton of different ways. You just have to get creative about how you measure. And if you're expecting the dollar for dollar ROI, you won't find it. But you will also see the long tail impact of running a Super Bowl ad. People will bring it up a year from now. They'll bring it up, in articles. They'll bring it up all the time. And one other piece that we did is we decided to release the ad early. So the hundreds of thousands of ad impressions that we got from the articles that picked up our ad and our unique story also really drove it home. So we had a unique perspective. We had a unique story. We did the entire thing in-house. So we didn't spend comparably a ton of money compared to one of our competitors who decided to do something very huge and splashy. We did it all in-house. We used mostly all of our internal talent with a few other actors that were, not big actors, and we were able to do that. So we were able to do it in a cost-efficient way for us that we knew we wanted to build up, and we had already invested a ton of money into our strategy. So I would say, there are certain things that you will be doing if you have a strong brand strategy that is definitely not dollar for dollar like ROI, but they're long tail strategies that you are thinking about investing yourself for 10, 20, 30-year brand. And that's what brand-led companies do. They think about 10, 20, 30 years in the future and imagine what the company will be and where it will be, and the fact that brand was a helpful and key driver of the growth early on and then through later stages. So it's a long-term, long-tail strategy, and that's what you need to think about if you're investing in it. But it can help in many ways. Brand drives everything. It can drive everything short and long term. So there's a lot that goes into it, but it is definitely a longer play.
For sure. And what's interesting about the Super Bowl ad is the fact that there's residual value, which you can't necessarily measure. Like we're talking about it right now. This literally became one of my key questions. And it would, like you said, it would be a mistake to try and measure it as dollar for dollar ROI.
Yep, exactly.
Melissa, appreciate your time. Any final thoughts you'd like to leave people with?
Yeah, I would say that success and growth is not a linear path, and allow the journey to guide you. I believe everything happens for a reason. Even your failures can become the greatest moments of your career when you look back on what you learned or what you took away from it. So try to take something out of everything. I would say that's my biggest piece of advice. Try to learn from everything, whether it's a success or a failure or a bad time in your life. Take a lesson away and continue to carry that lesson with you, and then find the routines in your life that will make you successful and able to grow.